the leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
Wrong way. Welcome to the place.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield.
The leader in talk radio on the Internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View. Alright, this is Jessie here. I'm happy to be back with you for yet another wonderful podcast. Topic of this podcast: who is Kim Jong Un? Where was he educated? What was his life like before he became the leader of North Korea? or as I commonly refer to him quietly, the lunatic from the north. No, I don't live in Korea, south, north, east, west, anywhere in that region of the world, but I have nicknames for lots of world leaders. I'm sure you'll learn a few of them over time. Kim Jong Un, or any ruler of North Korea, is the lunatic from the north. Alright, so let's get started. Where was Kim Jong Un educated? Where did he grow up? How much exposure to the Western world had he had before he took over? Let's learn about this man, because he's kind of interesting, and it's kind of interesting to see how he was treated versus how his citizens are treated. I think it's personally pretty fascinating. Hope you enjoy the ride with me. Let's find out about this guy. I've got some audio pulled up from a documentary done on his life, so let's take a listen.
Our journey begins in the heart of the Swiss Alps, in Bern, the capital of the Swiss Confederation. This is the home of one of the biggest North Korean communities abroad. It's a discreet community, whose activities have nonetheless attracted the attention of a member of a consortium of investigative journalists.
There is a historical explanation. Switzerland is a neutral country, a member of the United Nations in Geneva and other international bodies. And North Koreans have always had access to Switzerland, with its peaceful side and its respect for privacy. Many famous people have sent their children to be educated here in Switzerland. These are probably the reasons that compelled King Jong-il to send his children to Switzerland.
Right away, we know that Kim Jong-un was educated in Switzerland. Now, excuse me, I'm going to need to grab another cough drop. So he's obviously been exposed to the West. He hasn't grown up his whole life isolated in North Korea. This is something I find fascinating. I also found it fascinating that Switzerland's the largest North Korean population outside of Korea. Or outside of North Korea. Wait a minute. Why would North Korea allow its people to travel to such a free and open society? Wait a minute. When you look at what life is like inside North Korea and what life is like in Switzerland, those are polar opposites. Alright, so Kim Jong-un was obviously probably brought up with the best of everything, given who his father was. Now, let's listen into a little bit more of this audio and go on learning a little bit more about Kim Jong-un, the man.
A study of Swiss administrative documents reveals the existence of a Mr. Pak, for whom in 1992 the North Korean embassy in Switzerland requested a visa and a posting to Bern. The visa request bore the names of 3 children, Chol, Hun, and Mi Yang. The names were only slightly altered, and the birthdays were identical. Mr. Pak's children were in fact those of the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il.
We knew the children were here, we knew their real identities, but it was not a problem for the Swiss authorities. It was even seen as a boon.
Why?
To maintain links with the country, which had already cut itself off from the rest of the world.
The unusual family spent a year living at the embassy in a residential suburb of Bern. Chol, the eldest, enrolled at a nearby international school for the children of diplomats and businessmen. His brother, Hun, joined a state school in the town. He spoke German with his classmates. After a few difficult months, he was said to be a rowdy loner, but he finally made a handful of Swiss friends and settled into school life.
The boys' school results weren't bad. They were sometimes mediocre, sometimes all right. And he was very much into sports. And he was particularly interested in basketball. He was very keen and quite good at it.
Around this time, the Pak family moved into an ordinary apartment near the school. Visitors were not welcome. But there were photos of the property on the estate agent's website, showing a standard middle-class family home. Living here meant the children could enjoy a free and easy life with their friends. They sometimes had lessons in Swiss democracy at school. They even got to visit the Swiss parliament.
All right, so time out. You're telling me that the children lived a, quote, free and easy life and had lessons in Swiss democracy and how Swiss parliament was run? And they run their country how? A dictatorship? I mean, well, I don't know if it's officially classified as that, but it sure should be. I mean, who are we kidding? This is two diametrically opposed opposites. All right. Yes, we're going to hear a lot of this particular documentary because, quite frankly, it's the best one I've found. And I mean the best. All right, let's keep listening.
And then, yes, he made friends. Some of them even told us that they were invited to his home to play Game Boy, etc. We also know that Kim Jong Un used to play basketball with his neighborhood friends, not necessarily of his own class, pretty much every evening, and that he was a perfectly pleasant kid, like all kids of his age.
The pictures we have of Pak Hun are in sharp contrast with the images we have of Kim Jong Un. How can we be certain that this is the same man who spent his entire adolescence in Switzerland? Judicial identification experts compared the two images. Facial spacing, ears, teeth. There seemed to be no possible doubt, added to which another clue was unearthed by the Swiss Secret Service. A North Korean woman by the name of Ko Young-hee regularly arrived in Switzerland by private plane. The Swiss agents who tailed her suspected she was smuggling precious metals, but the truth was something else altogether.
So she would arrive and usually stay 2, 3, or 4 months, and she would stay at the house too. But she would also go off on regular shopping trips in the great capitals of Europe. Or there would be big family get-togethers. I was told about a family reunion which took place in a hotel at Interlaken, for instance, where the family rented out a whole wing of the hotel and met up there.
Okay, wait a minute. Shopping trips in Europe, family reunions at a hotel in Interlaken, and you can bet this wasn't Motel 6 in Interlaken? I'm sorry, but this to me doesn't sound like a man who grew up isolated and doesn't know what real freedom and real democracy looks like. But yet he rules his country with an iron fist. It's just insanity in my mind. Why wouldn't he want something better for his people than what they have now? I wish I could talk to him or read his mind, but neither is obviously possible. Let's continue.
During the 90s, Kim Jong-il's private life was a state secret. Nobody knew about his 3 mistresses and 4 children. And when his health started to deteriorate, North Korea's neighbors were worried about who would succeed him and what might happen if Kim Jong-il were to disappear suddenly. But within the Kim family's secretive bosom, the decision had long since been made. The eldest son, Kim Jong-nam, would have seemed to be the natural successor in the Confucian tradition, just as Kim Jong-il had inherited power from his father. But Kim Jong-nam had committed several gaffes, among them an embarrassing arrest in Tokyo with a fake passport. He had wanted to visit Disneyland with his family. The second son, Kim Jong-chol, educated in Switzerland, was considered too soft, even too feminine by his father. Kim Jong-un may well have been the youngest son, but he was also the son of Kim Jong-il's greatest love, Ko Young-hee. The former dancer would play a significant role in the corridors of power.
Ko Young-hee played an important part in ensuring that her son took over the reins of power. Kim Jong-nam, the eldest son, already had an important role in the country's hierarchy, with an elevated position at the General Bureau of Data Processing, where he specialized in communication networks. But since Kim Jong-un took control, Kim Jong-nam has found himself in an awkward position. He can no longer return to North Korea.
Wait, so Kim Jong-un's brother, Kim Jong-nam, can no longer return to North Korea because of his rule. That doesn't sound very good to me. Let's keep going. I've got a little bit more on that, but not much. The Hermit Kingdom is truly the Hermit Kingdom. They keep their secrets.
The 17th of December, 2011. North Korea was in mourning. Kim Jong-il, the shining sun of the 21st century, had died just a few days before. It was time for the propaganda machine to set up the funeral scene. The funeral would also be the confirmation of the youngest son's accession, which had been confirmed to North Korea and the rest of the world a year earlier.
Kim Jong-il was ruling the country, or basically had senior positions in the country for quite some time before he became the leader, at least 10 years that he was involved. And Kim Jong-un, I think, it all came very suddenly. The propaganda, they did a bit of going back and sort of trying to create a story about how he was being trained many years in advance. But that wasn't the case at all. I mean, the fact of the matter was that his father had the first stroke, and that's when they started becoming concerned about succession. And then he died quite suddenly. And I think the young fellow was not ready. There was a plan, I think, to have him become the next leader. But I imagine they were thinking 5-10 years, not 1 year. And so, I think it was very clear from the funeral and everything, the way he looked and the way he was behaving, that he was in shock and not really ready to take over.
Okay, so we have a ruler who may or may not have been ready. I don't think he was ready. Who's suddenly been handed the reins of a nuclear power. What we know about him, he was educated in Switzerland, so he knows what democracy is. He's been exposed to Western culture, and he's quote-unquote been trained, but not as much as he needed to be. Let's continue with this audio. Like I said, this video makes a lot of important points. I will post the link to it.
Kim Jong-un's problems had already begun. Did the aging generals gathered around his father's coffin see such a young leader in a favorable light? Kim Il-sung, the founder of the nation, staked his claim by leading the anti-Japanese guerrilla army during the Second World War. Kim Jong-il was the regime's second in command for 15 years or so, and then assumed power after 50 years. Kim Jong-un, however, was a mere 26 years old with no experience and no reputation to precede him. So in order to keep his grip on the reins of power, he embarked on a monstrous purge. The regime needed to be represented by a whole new generation.
worst period.
Today, Kim Jong-un needs to connect with people who remember the Great Famine from their childhood. I believe it will be harder to maintain solidarity between the elite and the leader than it was for the two previous regimes. Things could be rather fraught, and so the power structure will be built on a foundation of differing interests and terror.
I think that there probably is a lot of internal churn there, because what seemed to be clear is that after Kim Jong-un did take power, he was trying to move some of the business concessions and the political power in the military that his father put there, right? His father believed in so-called military first politics, and move it over to the party, or at least balance out the party and the military. All of the generals that were with Kim Jong-un by the hearse of his father in the funeral procession are all gone. None of them are left. And so very clearly he's wiped out a group and is trying to bring in a new group.
Now, purges aren't an unusual thing in dictatorships when a new leader takes over, but this one was a bit extreme. Even his own family was not safe. Kim Jong-un killed his uncle. There's various speculations as to the method of execution, but they actually announced that the uncle had been executed. So that's a pretty scary thing. Alright, I've got a little bit more, but not much about Kim Jong-nam. Let's touch on that before we move on too much further. Alright, I managed to find this short audio clip about Kim Jong-nam. Let's take a listen.
In Macau, China, a man believed to be the eldest son of North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il says he's aware that his father may appoint his younger brother as successor.
Eldest son of the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-il denies reports he's defected to China. Kim Jong-nam spoke with reporters in his apartment in Macau.
I can say it's a totally fake story, and I never defected from North Korea. Now I'm still living in North Korea, and I'm traveling in Macau, in China.
Recent media reports say the North Korean leader has named his youngest son as his future successor. Kim Jong-nam, the eldest son, is asked about the latest reports on the North Korean leadership, but he says he hasn't been told of this news firsthand.
Well, I think so. I hear this news by media.
The 35-year-old Jong-nam has fallen out of favor with his father.
I told many times what the appointment of a successor is totally my father's decision. So he makes his decision, so he doesn't need to talk to me or talk to another person, I think.
Even by North Korean standards, very little is known about the youngest son, who is said to be under 30 years old. Some say his youth could be a problem in a society that values seniority. Media reports say an oath of loyalty by North Korean officials to the youngest son has been requested by Kim Jong-il.
Alright, so as you can see, we know very little about Kim Jong-nam. We know very little. I'm looking for more. There's just not a lot out there. Let's keep exploring this, because I think it's fascinating, the internal struggles and the family politics at play here. I've got a little more audio here about Kim Jong-nam. Let's take a listen.
That was one of the first signs that Kim had leapfrogged his two older brothers. Why? On the eldest, Kim Jong-nam, believed to be about 41.
Kim Jong-nam made the mistake of taking his playboy lifestyle abroad, and he was arrested by the Japanese police in 2001 trying to go to Tokyo Disney World. And the Japanese police spent hours and hours with him, which means the CIA and other intelligence services learned a lot about him.
Analyst Mike Green says Kim Jong-nam's a gambler, lives in Macau, speaks to journalists too much for the family's liking.
They can't kill him, but they can't let him run the country. He's not a reliable vehicle for the cult of personality, for the Stalinist propaganda.
Then there's the mysterious middle brother, Kim Jong-chul. Local media showed this photo, claiming it was him at an Eric Clapton concert about 2 years ago.
Kim Jong-nam, they don't view as reliable. The older brother, his father doesn't think he's strong. He's too feminine is the short thing. He might even be gay, but of course that will never come out. So now that we understand why Kim Jong-nam wasn't chosen, let's continue on who is Kim Jong-un, or as I call him, the lunatic of the north, from the north. Of course, have more audio on this, because like I said, I think this is a fascinating topic, and I hope you're enjoying it as well.
Believed in so-called military first politics and move it over to the party, or at least balance out the party and the military. All of the generals that were with Kim Jong-un by the hearse of his father in the funeral procession are all gone. None of them are left. And so very clearly he's wiped out a group and is trying to bring in a new group.
The most prominent victim of the purge was just behind him during the funeral. His uncle, Jang Song-taek, married to Kim Jong-il's sister. Since the 70s, this member by marriage of the family had been at the very heart of power. His brothers were powerful generals. He himself had held a number of key posts in the armed forces and the economy. When Kim Jong-il's health first started to become a cause for concern, his name was mentioned as a potential successor, or at least as a regent to the dictator's young son. 2 years after coming to power, Kim Jong-un decided that his apprenticeship was over and had his uncle executed, along with most of his closest relatives.
2 years after taking power, Kim Jong-un executed his uncle. Let's explore this just a little bit further. Alright, this audio is from an interview with Secretary Kerry. It's an ABC exclusive on the subject of Kim Jong-un's uncle's execution. Let's listen.
Here to Vietnam, where we ask him about the startling developments out of North Korea, where Kim Jong-un, the young leader, had his uncle executed, a longtime power broker in the secretive nation.
What does this tell you about the danger coming from North Korea?
Well, it tells us a lot about, first of all, how ruthless and reckless he is, and it also tells us a lot about how insecure he is to a certain degree. This is not the first execution. There have been a significant number of executions taking place over the last months, which we're aware of.
And this was so public.
I mean, it really reminded me of a video that we saw of Saddam Hussein doing the same thing, having people plucked out of an audience and people sitting there sweating and nobody daring to move or do anything.
So basically, even if you're Kim Jong-un's family, you're not safe from his purges. He had his own uncle executed. There's rumors he had him mauled by dogs until he was dead. There's rumors of all kinds of things. I don't know how he was executed. Typically in North Korea, executions are carried out by firing squad, although I've heard of such things as surface-to-air missiles being used. I've heard of hanging. I've heard of all kinds of things. I don't know how he was executed. So we're not going to delve too far into how. Suffice it to say, he had him and family members of his executed. Let's get back to Kim Jong-un.
For us, Jang Sang-tak was a very competent man. I worked with him. He was funny and kind to his subordinates. He took good care of us and worked hard.
Certainly the news of his arrest and then his execution were quite surprising to many of us who study this country. But I think what was the most surprising was the written statement that came out explaining why he had been killed. In the past in North Korea, when these sorts of things happen, they happen very quietly. It's a car accident or it's a sickness, and there's really not much explanation given. But in this case, a very clear explanation, in many ways exposing vulnerabilities inside of North Korea.
The charge sheet accused Jan Sang-tek of wanting to overthrow the regime. This was a tacit admission of a struggle at the heart of the power structure. He was also accused of being an unfaithful husband and a corrupt communist. And rumors of his fondness for young girls were confirmed by the official press.
Jang Sang-tek's public execution was very damaging for the regime. North Korea is a deeply Confucianist country where respect for one's elders, especially relatives, is ingrained. Murdering his own uncle was more likely to harm the people's loyalty to Kim Jong Un than consolidate his power. I think that the members of the elite who lose respect for their leader could also turn away from him.
In order for his accession to power to succeed, Kim Jong-un decided to use terror to subdue the regime's old guard. He then concentrated all the key posts and surrounded himself with those loyal to him.
I think that Kim Jong-un is in charge. I don't think that there are puppets behind him because I think the system is designed to only have one person in charge. And so, and everybody must demonstrate their personal loyalty to him in order to survive.
Okay, so you have to be personally loyal to the ruler, not to the country, not to the state, to the man who is currently ruling the country. That's a very interesting point of view. It's not something most of us can fathom. It would be like saying that you have to be loyal to President Obama or you face execution. Now, thankfully, we don't live in that kind of a society here in this country. However, I think it has some terrifying possibilities. Let's continue with this.
20 million Koreans live in the city of Seoul, the capital of South Korea. 20 million people more obsessed with their own success than with Kim Jong-un. However, closer scrutiny reveals that the whole city is ready for war. The military's control over the city makes it an impregnable citadel. A vast underground network was conceived as a shelter from any attack by the North. But people no longer notice the gas masks and the emergency rations provided in ever-dwindling numbers in the underground stations.
I'm not worried about war. I've done my national service. Their nuclear capacity, on the other hand, that does worry me greatly.
I don't understand why he wants to develop nuclear weapons. To blackmail us? To threaten us? To get something out of us? Or just for his own personal glory?
I'm not really afraid of war. Their nuclear threat seems to be their only survival mechanism.
The North Korean border is only 30 kilometers away. It's an impassable demilitarized zone 2 kilometers across with hundreds of thousands of soldiers either side of it. Seoul is well within range of cannon fire. The soldiers in the south can see villages in the north. Unlike his father, Kim Jong-un personally inspects the advanced posts, which are the greatest threat to Seoul.
The main difference that was felt in the early days of the Kim Jong-un era was that he seemed much more belligerent and hostile than Kim Jong-il. This was particularly noticeable in his military policy. It was very public. He didn't try to hide it. He stressed the importance of operations designed for a potential confrontation with South Korea. He increasingly put his armed forces on a war footing. This approach was illustrated by the training and exercises that the North Koreans were subjected to.
Kim Jong-un made his first North Korean propaganda appearance a year before his father's death. He was made a 4-star general, signifying his arrival at the heart of power. In North Korea, power means first and foremost the army.
I believe that he attended, for a period of time, perhaps maybe 6 months, one of the military academies. They have given him some titles, and of course, he, the way that they're creating the myth is that he planned the Chonin sinking and the shelling of YPO. So I don't believe he has any credible military experience, But I think that they are trying to create that myth.
This brings us to the question, how much of Kim Jong-un's experience is myth and how much of it is fact? I'm inclined to say it's more myth than reality. I'm sorry, but he doesn't have the background. He doesn't have the experience. He is, in essence, trying to do something for which he does not fully understand consequences, ramifications, or anything else. This man is insane. I mean, come on. There's a reason I call him the lunatic from the north. Let's keep investigating this lunatic.
Was given the title as a 4-star general in one of the people's assemblies as they were making the transition, but not any experience that we know of. The propaganda says he's an artillery expert. So they try to create a myth around him that shows that he's a great warrior, a great military man. And I'm sure for the military in North Korea, they probably don't like that. That this young fellow with no experience all of a sudden gets 4 stars and is considered one of the top military brass in the country, even though he has no experience.
This is the equivalent of taking a private who barely knows how to salute and put on his uniform, which I've never seen Kim Jong Un in a uniform, and saying, "Here, you run this. You now have all this power and authority." People may not like it, but they won't speak out. They just won't, for fear of execution. All right, let's take a look a little more. We're almost done, I promise, but I think this is fascinating stuff.
Thousands of tanks and hundreds of aircraft inherited from Soviet-era Moscow are all but obsolete.
So their military equipment is essentially obsolete, at least the conventional stuff. Now, we've all heard and we've seen to some extent their cyber warfare. On that note, why don't we go to commercial, and we'll talk about this a little more after the commercial break.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
If you want to work until you keel over, have less of everything in retirement, or give back more of your hard-earned money to the stock market again, then just ignore me. But if you'd like to protect the money you save, receive a steady, predictable retirement income, and enjoy financial security for as long as you live, then listen to this. You can download a free report that reveals the wealth-building secrets Wall Street and the banks don't want you to know. You'll learn how you can get guaranteed growth, safety, and real prosperity without risking your money in the Wall Street casino, and how to get the money you need when you need it, simply by asking for it. This is the best way to have a 100% secure retirement and know your money will last as long as you do. To learn more about this method and to get your free report, go to 29security.com. That's the number 29security.com. 29security.com. Go to 29security.com.
Thank you for hanging in there with me during that commercial break. I've got some more audio about North Korea, their weapons, and Kim Jong Un. Let's take a listen.
Pyongyang, and so 90 miles, 20 miles to the border with the DMZ, you don't need such conventional, sophisticated weaponry. You need the manpower, the multiple rocket launchers. I mean, within 90 minutes, it could be a disaster. And then there's also the asymmetrical side. I mean, we're looking at the military in the conventional sense, with conventional weapons. And then we're saying, the priority's been the missile and the nuclear program. Absolutely. There's also asymmetrical warfare, looking at other capabilities, like cyber capabilities and what have you. And elements of weapons of mass destruction. It's not only nuclear, but you've got biological programs, you've got chemical programs. So I think this is a government that has invested heavily in their military, but it doesn't always come across in their conventional military capabilities. It's a myriad of capabilities, and some of them are very potent.
So while their actual military hardware is old, given the distance, given the proximity, could still be incredibly effective. And then you've got the asymmetric warfare, cyber, chem-bio, which is short for chemical or biological weapons. And then you've got their ever-present, ever-prevalent, making more news every day, nuclear capabilities.
North Korea looks to have fired a submarine-launched ballistic missile off its east coast. The reports come from South Korea's military, which says it's on high alert over the possibility that Kim Jong Un's regime could now conduct its fifth nuclear test at any time, in defiance of UN sanctions. The North first attempted a launch of the submarine-based missile last year, trying to develop such a weapons system which could pose a new threat to its neighbors and the United States if perfected. The fear is that the isolated North might conduct a nuclear test or a missile launch in a show of strength ahead of a ruling party Congress next month, the first such meeting in 36 years.
All right, so we have a number of things going on. We have the North Koreans did successfully launch a missile from a submarine. That's a little bit scary. What if that missile next time isn't launched into the ocean? What if next time that missile is headed for land? Now, let's connect a few dots. I know I've absolutely overwhelmed you today. All right, so we basically have a North Korean leader who is too young, inexperienced, maybe half at most trained, who then decides to do a purge. He's trying to consolidate power. He executes everybody he feels like executing, including his own uncle. And he also executes members of his uncle's family, just to, quote, wipe them off the face of the earth, unquote. All right. He even airbrushes the uncle out of photos and things like that. So we're talking, try to remove all trace the man existed. Thankfully, we're here in the West. We aren't bound by what our government wants us to see. Thank God, First Amendment rights. So maybe I'll play the day that Google died at the end of this instead of doing a happy news segment, because I don't have a good one right now. Because trust me, Google helps me every day. All right. So we have a country that has claimed to have miniaturized nuclear warheads. They can successfully launch missiles, including now from a submarine. Are they 100% successful? No. Do they have the warheads small enough to put on a missile? Maybe. One of the shorter range missiles? Most likely. One of the longer range missiles? Not as likely. The further the missile has to fly, the smaller the warhead has to be. So, but this is very scary. Unfortunately, we have a man who I believe is, let's just put it bluntly here, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, trying to run a nuclear country. He acts like the country was built and left to him by his parents just for his own enjoyment. He also does a few other crazy things. I mean, we know he has a fascination with the NBA. I'm sure we could get the NBA to give him lifetime season tickets if he would agree to reunification with South Korea. But I don't think he's going to do that. And also, South Korea kind of goes, yeah, we saw what happened in Germany after reunification. That's a poison pill. Not sure we want to swallow it. We'll just pat you on the head. Unfortunately, now that the Kaesong industrial complex that I've referred to in a previous broadcast about North Korea has been shut down, the two Koreas seem further apart than ever before. Will they ever reunify? God only knows. So, we've got someone who wasn't ready for power, assuming the reins, trying to make it the best of it, and his only way to hold on to power is to be ruthless, intimidating, and in a way Stalinist. Alright, I've got just a little bit more for you. I know this is a very tough subject to understand and comprehend in some ways. That's why I've tried to break everything down. Alright, North Korea has scheduled a meeting that hasn't been held in years, kind of a get-together of the Workers' Party. But they're also up to a few other things. Let's take a listen. Again, more audio.
Sweeping layout of South Korea's version of the White House. But this complex isn't in Seoul. It's near Pyongyang. A South Korean defense official tells CNN this mock-up is designed for North Korean forces to launch an assault exercise. The simulated attack on the so-called Blue House, where South Korean President Park Geun-hye lives, could come at any moment.
Commandos could do training exercises where they enter the facility and try to capture it. Also, this facility was built at a well-used artillery range, and it's quite possible they just want to blow it up for maximum media impact.
The South Korean official says the assault drill is intended to instill fear among South Koreans Analysts say Kim Jong Un likely knows an attack on his South Korean rival would bring massive retaliation from Seoul and Washington. But President Park is familiar with these kinds of attacks on the most painful, personal levels.
Because of Park Geun-hye's family history and her position as the president of South Korea, it's very important for the security services in South Korea to take the necessary precautions to guard her safety.
Kim Jong Un's family, which has led North Korea since 1948, has a long history of brazen assaults on South Korean presidents, trying and failing at least 3 times to assassinate them. One of those attempts in 1974 targeted President Park's father.
The one you see here. And in that particular case, unfortunately, his wife, the mother of the current president, got in the way and was killed.
Park Geun-hye was just 22 at the time and had to become South Korea's first lady after her mother died. Park's father had also been targeted 6 years earlier. In 1968, more than 30 elite North Korean commandos infiltrated across the DMZ and stormed the Blue House. The attack failed. Most of the North Koreans were killed. The man who ordered all those attacks, Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung, who the young dictator is said to be obsessed with imitating.
Kim Jong-un appears to be calling up images of his grandfather's brazen attacks on the South to intimidate the South, and I think to demonstrate to the North, as he prepares for this big party Congress, that he's an even greater leader than his father.
Now, one analyst says if the North Korean forces stage an assault on this mock-up of the Blue House, we may well see it. He says this facility was built in an artillery testing area where Kim Jong-un frequently goes to watch military exercises. Those drills are sometimes shown on North Korean television, and the U.S. and its allies are often surveilling the site from satellites, Wolf, so we could see this assault when it happens.
All right, so Kim Jong-un likes to wage war on multiple levels. He likes to not only do the physical things, he's trying to resemble his grandfather. He's trying to be the second coming of his grandfather, who was beloved by the people. It's even rumored that he had plastic surgery to look more like him. Now that is a rumor. I cannot confirm it. But we've heard that this guy's young, inexperienced. He needs people to love him. What better way than to call up images and remind the country of their founder? All right, we have just a little bit more about North Korea. And then we are going to get to the day Google died. Because I don't know about you, but I need something funny after this. Either that or I'll play a Hillary parody. Yeah, I haven't decided. Now, North Korea did make an interesting offer the other day. They would stop their nuclear program. And if you believe that, I've got oceanfront property in Arizona. If the United States halts all military exercises with South Korea. Thankfully, President Obama, who I do bash on a fairly routine basis, saw that for what it was, a false promise, and said, no. Let me see if I got the audio queued up of his official statement. All right, the lunatic in the North has not given up on his mid-range missile, which has had a lot of problems. I've got some audio on this, and this is very recent news. It's from CNN. Let's take a listen.
South Korea saying this seems to have failed. What do we know about what happened here? And how much longer will it take before we get more information, do you think?
Very limited information, especially whenever there is a failed missile launch or a reported failed missile launch, because I was in North Korea just about 2 weeks ago on their most important holiday, the Day of the Sun, when there was another missile launch that South Korea and the United States say failed. And that missile, just like the one that was reportedly attempted to be launched and failed today, both of those were mid-range missiles, Musudan missiles, as they're called, launched from, at least in the last case, it was a mobile missile launching device, a device that would give North Korea, if this technology was successful, the ability to to move around from the locations from which they launch, making it far trickier to detect from spy satellites. It'd be a very dangerous development, although perhaps not as dangerous or significant as the successful submarine missile launch that happened over the weekend. Now, we are 1 week away from a major political gathering in North Korea, the Workers' Party Congress. It happens next Friday. It was just announced. South Korea is very concerned that in addition to this mid-range missile launch, which they had been predicting since Tuesday when they officially announced this, they also think there's a very good chance there could be a fifth nuclear test from North Korea at some point ahead of this Workers' Party Congress. Now, again, you never know exactly what's going to happen when you're talking about Pyongyang, but their activity, the repeated launches and tests that have been starting really since the beginning of this year indicates that the ramped up military activity will continue ahead of this major event next week.
It was Will Ripley of CNN. And yes, Western journalists do occasionally visit North Korea, but trust me, they always have minders with them. They are not free to shoot whatever they want. They are not free to report what they want. They have to be very careful when they're there. Just like anyone traveling to North Korea, I would never advise traveling there. I'm sorry. That's one trip I can't recommend taking. Just like I would never go to Tehran, I'm even leery about Beijing. So, alright. I don't know about you guys. I've had about enough about North Korea. Let's see what fun we can hang. Would you rather go Hillary or the day Google died?
She's a very slinky girl, the kind you don't want for Commander-in-Chief. She will never let her guard down. Says it's her turn to be leader. Oh, girl. She likes her emails to be secret. She says it's none of your damn business. When she makes her move to conceal, it's Miss Half-Time. She's never done no wrong. Oh, no. That girl is pretty brave now. The girl's a super sneak. The kind of girl you vote for. Liberals are so weak. That girl is pretty sleazy. The girl's a super sneak. I'd really love to trust her, but I'm not that weak. She's not right, not that right. That girl's not right with me. Yeah. Hey, 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 hey. She's a super sneak, super sneak. She's super sneaky, yow. Jinsaki sing, super sneak, super sneak. She's a very special girl, above the law, you know. From Benghazi to her email, servers out of sight. And she'll keep her emails hidden, the Kim Wiener. In her mansion, stashed in Chappaqua. What difference does it make, she says. But Trey Gowdy, he'll be waiting. She testifies and he will grill her in the hot seat. It's such a freaky scene. That girl is pretty sneaky. The girl's a super sneak. The girl should be arrested. 5 to 10 at least. That girl is pretty sleazy. The girl's a super sneak. I'd really love to jail her. The girls would love fresh meat. She's not right, not that right. That girl's not right for the presidency. Yeah. Hey, 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 hey. She's a super sneak, super sneak. She's super sneaky, yow. Bill Clinton sing. Oh, super sneak, super sneak. Hillary's a super sneak. Oh, she's a very sleazy girl, the kind you don't want for Commander-in-Chief. She will never let her guard down. Let's get her off the street.